Hello, I'm Justin Loth. This is my mother, Julie. Okay, so Mom, we're going to be talking about the 1980s today.
Okay.
So, first question is, when and where were you born?
I was born in Sheboygan on September 1st, 1968.
And what type of environment did you grow up in? What was the community like?
I grew up in a small town of roughly 5,000 people. I grew up on a dairy farm in the rural part of the town, and yeah, it was a small farming community.
What were your religious commitments when you were young?
Um, my parents were both actively involved in our church. They were and are still members at Sarin United Church of Christ, and so I was raised in that Protestant faith.
What were some forms of entertainment?
Um, we would play outside, my sister and I. When I started going to school and having friends, I rode my bike to my friend's Laura's house. Um, I remember riding my bike all the way into Sheboygan Falls once and playing tennis with a friend of mine. But usually we'd play board games or cards. And then when we got into high school and could drive, the big thing was that we went to the movies.
How did school back then differ from schools today, like high school?
Um, I only had one AP class. It was an English AP class. That was the only one offered. Today there are a lot more AP classes, a lot more focus on narrowing your um, interests and preparing you for college. Um, I didn't have calculus in high school. The highest math class was pre-calc. Um, and I think there was a little more free time in high school.
What was a big trend of the time? Like today, a trend for teenagers would be like PlayStation or Fortnite or something. So what was the trend of the 1980s
Trend in the 80s.
in Sheboygan?
Well, like I said, we hung out and went to movies a lot.
What about like clothing wise, appearance?
Well, it's a lot of people wore the preppy style, so polo shirts with the collars turned up. Um, Letter jackets were big in high school, whether you were an athlete or you were into music. You got a letter jacket and wore things on your medals on your jacket. Um, all the girls had big hair, big boofy long hair.
What were some big news events that drew the nation's attention?
I remember being a junior in high school when the Challenger blew up with Krista McCullough. That was a big event. Um, the Berlin Wall coming down was a big deal. Trying to think of other things. Yeah, I guess those are two highlights.
What about the Cold War? Did the Cold War have any effect on you? Any effect on Grandpa and Grandma or Aunt Lois?
Yeah, I remember talking about it, but I guess in a small town we didn't focus on that. It was in the news, but it wasn't something that um, hindered or affected our daily lives, I would say.
Did it affect what were society's views on the possibility of a nuclear war, like in Milwaukee or Chicago, more urban areas? What would you say that effect?
Um, I don't know if I never knew anybody who had, say, like a bomb shelter or extra supplies tucked away or anything. Um, but I think people were scared and worried that there was going to be a nuclear threat to the United States. Um,
Okay. Did you guys travel at all? What was
yes, we'd usually go on a vacation once a year.
any any exotic places?
Highlights,
Any
nothing exotic. We always stayed in the United States. Um, we went to St. Louis. We drove to St. Louis. I remember going to Florida. Um, I think we went to California once. Um, but yeah, a week family vacation. We'd go somewhere.
um hmm. What would you say is the difference from then to now, based on your experience in Singapore? What
Hmm.
would you say would be a different point of view you had of maybe Southeast Asia when you were in high school?
Oh, when I was in high school, um, we talked about Asia maybe in our history class, world history, or if it came up on the news, but um, there wasn't, at least, in my high school or my hometown, there wasn't a big focus on Asia, worrying about the economics or, a cultural exchange or anything like that. Where I grew up was a very European and German settled area. So um, we talked about, Sheboygan had a sister, or still does have a sister city of Esslinger in Germany. And there were picnics and events that had European backgrounds or food and things like that. There really wasn't any focus on Asia when I was growing up.
Um, how would you say your um, let's just say global knowledge or knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of world events has changed from
So
then to now?
um, I think living overseas definitely helped my knowledge of world events. Um,
What about in the 80s?
in the
Well,
80s, we would we would talk about different world events. I do remember being in one of my social studies classes and the teacher asking us by a show of hands if we thought um, there would be, nuclear war. And most of us did raise our hands. So, I mean, we were aware of the Cold War and the threat. Um, but I think when you're a teenager, you don't focus as much on world events. You're maybe aware of them, but your focus is the present and what you have to do at school for the week and being with your friends. So I think I'm much more aware of world events now, and especially after having lived in a foreign country.
what was one of the biggest technological changes of the 1980s that you remember?
Technological changes. Oh, good grief. I got an electric typewriter when I graduated from high school. That was a big deal. um, and took that to college. I remember learning to write simple computer programs in computer class in high school. So that was kind of just the start of technology changes. Um, and, ever since then, things have just grown by leaps and bounds.
Um, Okay, we just passed the 10-minute mark. What were some sitcoms or TV show that was popular that you liked? How's that changed?
There were a lot more family sitcoms. We would watch on Thursday nights. We would watch Bill Cosby's The Cosby Show, and we'd pull the dining room table over so we could see the TV, which was in the living room, and we'd just eat on that little corner, all tucked together, so we could watch that. Um, yeah, there were a lot more family shows that everybody could sit down and watch together. There was no reality TV. Um, there was, there were some game shows, um, but not like there are today. So,
What would you say is like the average household in the 1980s? Like what consisted of
like
a normal household, like in terms of
the
how big it
family
was
makeup
and
or the
yeah, the family
economic.
makeup and like
Um,
meals and how much of this they had and
um, I in our community, I would say, you know, most everybody sat down to dinner together as a family. Um, we had activities, but they didn't. They weren't as numerous as they are today. There weren't club sports where you were practicing 2, 3 times a week and then having, matches all weekend. Um, so, right, we ate dinner together. We did our homework. My sister and I. People didn't have as many activities to go to, and um, I think you were more involved in church. Actually, I grew up doing a lot of youth activities at church, and so there weren't as many things pulling at you in different directions, and there was a more of a focus on family time.
well, I'm out of questions. I can't think of anything else, so we'll stop.
Okay.